I want to turn to something Jacob and others have talked about, and that is this major health issue facing millions of people living in and around the LA area. All this smoke and soot and ash. Jacob talked about the cloud above him, so dark it looks like nighttime. It's suddenly kicked up into the atmosphere since the fire began. It is creating an air quality crisis emergency in the surrounding area. Authorities are recommending people in parts of Los Angeles County, including Malibu, take measures to protect themselves because such poor air quality can have an effect on anyone breathing it in, especially people who are very, very young, very old, or pregnant, or with any other underlying conditions. Joining us on that is global health policy expert, MSNBC medical contributor, Dr. Vin Gupta. Dr. Gupta, Jacob had his mask on. He said he took it off because the wind shifted. It made me nervous, but I trust he's taking the advice of the experts on the ground. Tell us what people in and around Los Angeles affected by the fires and near them need to know today.
Yeah, of course. I mean, a very moving segment, just catching that with you and Jacob. So first of all, just thank you for sharing that and for letting Jacob share how meaningful all of this is really to him from a personal standpoint. And it affected me just listening to that. To the matter at hand, though, from a health standpoint, there's things that every one of your viewers, especially in the LA County area, but frankly, given this world that we live in, Nicole, need to keep in mind. Smoke is a reality for most of the country now, but especially now in Southern California. So I want to divide into a few things, but acutely, if you are facing flames as we speak in some form, if you're next to close to a fire, often what happens, and this gets underplayed, is that acute smoke exposure, Nicole, far away from flames, can be as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than the flames themselves. And so when it comes to fires, more deaths actually occur because of smoke exposure than because of heat from, say, a flame. And so it's important one to keep that in mind. If you're near a fire and can't evacuate, can't get out, which is number one, get out if you can. Go and get as low as you possibly can. Critical to do that. Get low to the ground because smoke rises to the top. So if you're in an enclosed space, you can't open up a window, try to get to the door, but do so by getting as low to the ground as possible because smoke rises to the ceiling. So that's number one. Number two, just for everybody to make sure, especially if you have family members that might be in harm's way, are less mobile. This is a safety issue, of course, especially as we're aging. Less mobility. We have to be thinking about how do we evacuate people safely. But again, smoke exposure can cause rapid incapacitation. That's the worry, is exposure to carbon monoxide. And, we often hear about people getting exposed to carbon monoxide, say, in a garage if their car, for example, wasn't turned off and the entire home is exposed to carbon monoxide. But this is something that's really critical. Carbon monoxide binds to key cells in your blood, and they actually take up oxygen, or they displace oxygen. You rapidly become altered, dizzy. So that's the concern here, is incapacitation, even from a few minutes of smoke exposure. So that's the acute piece. For those with, say, asthma, you had mentioned young people. I'd also add in anybody that's pregnant. We know just a few minutes of exposure to wildfire smoke, Nicole, recently, some data showed, can actually harm your developing baby's immune system for years afterwards. So that's something to keep in mind, and especially those with pre-existing conditions. What can you do to keep your home safe? First of all, stay indoors. I think Jacob's point, this is not a time to be outside. Close your windows, close your doors. I'd recommend even putting heavy-duty tape on your windows where they meet actually the frame of the window, so you can really minimize even particles disseminating into your ambient in-home environment. Try to use an air purifier. Many of us have air purifiers over the last 5 years. We've purchased them. If you don't have one, you can do a DIY air filter where you get a box fan and have a MERV 13 filter right next to it. So you can jerry-rig one if possible, or if you have one already, try to run it around the clock. And especially for everybody in Southern California, if you have air conditioning, that's something you want to make sure you're running continuously, because not only does it make it a cooler environment, it actually is actively filtering the air around you. So those are things you can do for your ambient environment, number one. Number two, I would just quickly say to Jacob's point, And to all the firefighters out there, to all the first responders, I've seen a lot of folks wear respirators, N95 masks that you and I have talked about many, many times. That's good. That blocks out that particulate black soot from entering your lungs, which we know is devastating to human health. The thing we have to keep in mind, though, Nicole, is it actually does not prevent you from inhaling volatile gases and toxic gases that are very common in wildfire smoke. That's where you want something like a gas mask. And so that's a critical PPE for, frankly, reporters on the ground like Jacob, and also for firefighters. I've seen a lot of images out there, firefighters not wearing anything. We want to make sure they have the right PPE, something to keep in mind. Gas masks is ideal versus a respirator, i.e. an N95 mask that blocks soot, but it does not block toxic gases from getting breathed in.
And I imagine with what Jacob described as a huge fire in the middle of an urban area, that's a real danger for all the first responders and reporters on the ground. Dr. Gupta, thank you so much for joining us. We'll continue to call on you in the coming days.